This morning's topic of women in politics seems more meaningful than ever in our current surreal political environment. And while we are making great progress with more women participating in national, regional, and community leadership than ever before, we've still got a long way to go. So Cathy, I'm really excited to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. While Cathy is talking, please feel free to write questions in the chat area, and we'll be talking about those towards the end. So enjoy, and Cathy, welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, particularly in these incredible times with these incredible stories and these incredible lies, truths, and myths. So what I thought I'd do today is to give you a reason to be cheerful, to be happy, to not be crazy. So I thought that if you would like the gift of optimism, which I've struggled with, believe me, over the last 3.5 years, I can only say that I am happy to tell you that the best is yet to come. And that may look obvious to anybody, but when it comes to the realities of the politics surrounding us, there are some tidbits to learn and some interesting things for those of us who are women who have worked forever to be able to have a seat at the table, and now to actually be able to use it and appreciate it, maybe even make people's lives better. I want to start with just a couple of interesting factoids that I had this unbelievable shock when I actually started looking for the reasons why our 2013 City Council would change so dramatically to this. If you'll notice, we have right here 6 guys, 3 women. Here we have 6 women, 3 guys. Here we have an average age of 61. Here we have an average age of 44. Here we happen to have people who have, I would say, been around for a while, only 1 person of color. Here we have 5 people of color. In all of it, it has been an incredible situation to get in there and find out, why did this happen exactly? Was this something we planned for? Was it something we would have expected? Is it something that just happened from the goddess? What happened? Now, this does not take into account the many and sundry arguments I've had with every single one of them over every single policy that seems to be coming down. But the fact is that an amazing thing happened here that we need to learn from. It's not necessarily the quality of the actual candidate that put these people into office. What it is the difference between 17% of people under the age of 35 voting and 54% people under the age of 35 voting. In taking a look at anything, there's other extenuating circumstances. This is the year that we went to districting, where you didn't run at large, you ran from very specific districts. And the intent, though I did not support that move because I liked the fact that every council member was going to be responsible to me. I liked the fact that I could have more than one choice and more than one person that would actually help with the kinds of problems we have. But what this was designed to do was to bring people of color, young people, as well as more of the people who are working class, who look like us, work like us, act like us. And that is precisely what we did here, better than we have any other place in the country. No other place in the country has a kind of diversity change like this in 6 years' time. But that is something to keep in mind as we even go through this presentation today, because the impact of how more women, more people of color, people with, I would say, affordable incomes, as opposed to those who have, I would say, 6+ figures to be able to live on. The fact is that these are the factors that determine whether or not you have representative government or whether you have the white guys in charge. So it's been something that we have used for quite some time. Now, I know you are seasoned women, you are women of the cause. This is where I thought I might just simply ask if you could all remember, why is it again that women make better leaders? Why is that? Well, indeed, if you go throughout the world, which I have done, 49 different countries, what I can tell you is that no matter where I go and I say, what is it that makes a woman a better leader? Not all the time, but sometimes, what is it? And they ironically come back within a scope of about 18 different words. And this goes through 17 different languages. From all of that, which I have been privileged to listen to, they come up with a list of 10 basic, I would say, generally accepted characteristics of women. Anybody want to chat as to what those might be? Anyone want to go to the chat room and just sort of put out a couple of those words that you actually think are the words that people use when they talk about a woman and why her leadership characteristics are needed? Anybody got some ideas? Jody, and with you and Monica, just take a look and see if there's any that have been mentioned. There are so many interesting reasons that people today are voting for women.
Yep. Empathy, relationships, good listeners, compassion, collaborative, family oriented.
Bingo, 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 and bingo. All of those are on the list of exactly why it is people are choosing women in record numbers, I should say. Not the status quo, where fresh approaches, honest and open, better listeners, inclusive, dependable. That's a new one this year. Most people think if you have a chance to hire a woman or a man to do a job, there's just no doubt. It's like men will obviously say women because she'll never give up until it's done. And they're compassionate, empathetic, cooperative. They tackle issues. We are still issue heads compared to what most people think in terms of looking for the spotlight. And we ask good questions, lots of questions. And by the way, when we ask questions and we don't get answers, we don't move on. We stop right there until we get the answer that we think is really the answer. And we admit when we're wrong. We can change our minds. Used to be changing one's mind was a political no-no, because actually, if you change your mind, that means you're not consistent. We can't depend on you. What team are you on? The track for all of us is now women are deciding, yes, but what if these circumstances lead me, because I'm looking for compassionate leadership here, what if they mean that I'm going to, after doing 31 different land use decisions, I'm going to change my direction and vote against this one or for this one? The fact is that the society we are in still and yet blames someone who's inconsistent is actually one of those things that men listen with women when they're talking about women's leadership. They feel is the beginning of distrust because they can't kind of pretend to know what the answer is going to be when she's there. It's one of the biggest things at the United States Congress from both sides of the fence, Democrats and Republicans. It's the reason why when women cross lines, men make big deals of it, when actually what's the case is women are more actually reasonable, and they are listening, and they are making decisions based on what they think is right, not because I've done it 31 times before. Now, to be honest, if people believed only this about women, we'd all be in office. The fact is that's just not the case, of course. And so there are also attributes we have that are not positive, that people mention all the time when it's, well, I really like her, but the one problem she's got is what? Yeah, you would believe it. There's the same 10 reasons people list as why they don't necessarily think a woman would be a great leader. And they will latch on to one of these 10 different characteristics as a reason not to follow her, not to believe her, not to vote for her. Any idea when they say things like, yeah, I think I would vote for her, but, or I don't know, she's really not very good at what? Fill in that in your chat room. Give me a few of those words that are the words that literally you don't ever have to worry about whether or not people think this about you or not, because in both these attributes as well as the negative, you don't have to swear that you are or aren't that, because people believe it anyways. So if you're on the good list and people think you're compassionate, that's terrific. But it also comes with the knowledge that they think you might be what?
So a few of them that are coming up: too emotional, not
Absolutely.
tough enough, distrustful, not committed, weak.
Well, 3 of those are right, but that still gives you a pretty darn good attribute list. Too emotional, number 1. The fact that we take things too personally. That if you should get up and speak against a provision or a piece of legislation I sponsor, I'm never going to forget it. The fact that we don't work well with other women, this has changed since Me Too, but it's still predominant thinking that we can't work well with each other because we're too busy competing against one another. And you know what? We do. We do. We were born to compete with our sisters, not our brothers. We were born to literally not believe that every woman comes to us with just a positive feeling about us. The fact is we assume that they might not like us. What guys say all the time, the problem with women is they take so much longer to make a decision. The press people are always telling me things like, oh, Cathy, please don't elect any more of these women because I got to tell you. I mean, just sit tight. These meetings are long enough. Why would you put more women on? Every time you put a woman on, it's another extra hour a week I have to put into this business of representing our constituents. The fact is because women tend to read what they're told they should read, and we don't just read the executive summary. In research of over 2,000 elected leaders, women are the ones who say not only do they, if they had a 200-page report, they'd probably get to at least 150 pages of it. You talk to guys, they read the executive summary, put it on the shelf. It's actually the 76% difference between how much women read and how much men read. Same thing is true when it comes to the number of public hearings they attend, the number of times they will actually pay attention at a public meeting as opposed to checking their iPhone. The fact is that we tend to be there when we're there. Fact is, in all of it, self-confidence still becomes the number 1 problem that I see with women, and women acknowledge that they're not secure. They stand up in front of a crowd and the first thing they worry about is, oh my gosh, what do you think they see when they see me? In this, we're also seen as the yeah, but people. The fact is when we start talking and these guys go on rattling off why and why and why, and we get up and just say, yeah, but yeah, not considering the people who live there. Or yeah, but what's the financial cost going to be to the people who can't afford it now? Yes, we are seen as the yeah, but people. And even though I would argue that's a good thing, most people, particularly guys who hear it, don't. So the fact is that we're fair to the point of exasperation. We'd put our own brothers in jail if we found that they were being unfair or they had done wrong. Again, where I would think that's a positive, many people, including most of my brothers, think that's a bad idea. So from this perspective, I would say that good news and bad news is something that comes with the body right now. And in taking a look at it, sure, you can actually have all of the attributes that we say women should have, and you could have none of those we say that the public actually assumes from you. But the fact is, it's for you to know. You don't have to say you're open and honest. You don't have to say that you'll be fair. In many cases, if you're standing along, even in many cases, another woman, if you have I would say the style and the courage and confidence of leading as a woman, that you would actually be somebody that people would read that into. In all of it, I want to let you know that it hasn't always been this way. Hey, guess what this is? This is 20 years ago. Flashback. When the most number of women who were elected to their national parliaments or to their prime minister or to their president. This is the old days where actually it was really the more gentrified South American and even Central American countries. And it was really kind of focused on actually anything to do with our our friends from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, all of these, the Scandinavian countries were the #1 for almost 16 different decades that we go back before, I would say, 1990. After 1990, things began to change. In all of it, it was just a very white culture within these countries that actually moved more women into places of power. In that, this is where we are today with the most unbelievable list of places that have moved in. And now, as opposed to the top country having a mere 46% women's representation, now we have 7 countries which have over 50%, including Rwanda, which has an amazing 61%. And what's happened in these countries that is just amazing is that once you get past a critical point of, say, 25% women, what happens is that you become not only policy sponsors, policy makers, but also people who are more likely to pull out bad policies, stomp on them, and get to work doing good stuff. But places like Mozambique and Namibia, places like Cuba, Turkmenistan, I mean, Bosnia, these are the places that now have actually been part of the New World Order. And where we find the Scandinavian countries, they haven't moved to like 80%. They've still stayed in that 40%. They haven't increased the number. They've stayed between 36 and 46%. Pretty amazing. So what's the big deal about this? Why do we count just those big top? And I should say that United States isn't on here, but we have actually moved from 106th to 74th in the last 2 decades. And for us, that's a pretty big deal. And as you will find out today, there's a big surprise when you see when you do wake up and you see what happens and what we will know on November the 4th. What's happened in these countries that have had now more than 20% women, here's the kind of things they've done in the last 10 years. In South Sudan, there's been this new start where now there are no more child marriages. 22% of the women on their actual national parliament stood behind this woman, who is the Judge Shandira, that managed to actually take this to the Supreme Court. She actually ruled against it the first time, and they overruled her. She sent it back 3 times, and then finally went to the Supreme Court, and the women in Parliament stood behind the Supreme Court. Check this out. I would say in 10 years' time, if you went back 10 years ago, 32 African countries would not allow women to own land. 32 out of 54. 54 countries in Africa, 32 of them, no women owners of property. Today, 32 African countries in 10 years' time now have given women the right to own property, to be able to own land, till it, and more importantly, to be able to build on it. An amazing story for an amazing time. Rwanda, nothing like it. You got to hear this story. So these women, right after all of the suicides, the genocides, what happened is that 20 years ago, after the violence in Rwanda, women were elected in great numbers. And finally, actually, the first time they were elected, 46% won. They won. And only half of them were quoted in. What they did, one of their first moves was to actually fire all the police, the corrupt police who were into not just small time corruption and stopping people and getting money for tickets. What happens is they literally took all the money from the police department, all. And what they did is they hired a bunch of international consultants to clean the rivers and the waters. 4.8 in 5 kids died at birth. 4.8 out of 5. In 10 years' time, that's 3 seatings of women over 50% in the Rwandan capital. The fact is, now it's 4.9 out of 5 babies live. That's what the ability to access clean water has done. In this, there's nothing in the world that becomes more important in having more women in critical mass and the parliament than girls getting education. Right now, over 106 countries in the last 10 years have not only added women or let girls go to school, what they've done is be able to also give them things like the ability to compete in athletic classes, the ability to actually go away to school if they need to get special training or they need any kind of disability help. Fact is, when women are elected, the United Nations has said the most important thing you will ever learn in this world is that the more women that are at the table, the more little girls are going to get an education. That is the most important thing to remember when you elect a woman. In all of it, you know, Nepal, Cambodia, Indonesia, had the pleasure of working in all of these. When I first started working there, I would say in the late 90s, early 2000, the fact is that these three countries had among the highest rates of violence against women. Rape was not registered as an offense, and more importantly, there was no, if a family did not say that someone was indeed inappropriately was the word, inappropriately abusing a woman, the fact is there was no sentence for them. That is, in 10 years' time, these three countries now have cut the violence against women in half, and women speak freely about it. And when the Me Too movement started here, these three countries passed the toughest laws against violence against women. In all of this, what I wanted to say is that there's so much good that has come of women, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. In all of it, people here, I would say when we ask people, hey, how are we doing with the handling of the coronavirus? The fact is, 34% more women will choose people who have protective measures shown in regards to the COVID virus. 34% more women. Do not think that well, first of all, every woman wants to see her kid go to school yesterday. But the fact is, when it comes to the real world, women are by far much more cautious about whether or not there's enough protection. And it's not that they don't want the kids going back to school. What they really don't want is them to come back with a disease that'll go through the family. When it comes to the handling of foreign relations, 36% more men believe Trump is good for the world in terms of his tough stance on putting America first. However, 38% of the women, they know that Biden will be better. Women are also likely to vote in much greater numbers down the ballot race issues. They finish their ballot, as well we should. A lot of good things there. And then voting for women, who votes most for women? There's no doubt about it. Women under 35 years of age and men. When you take a look at this, 56 more people, which is what we showed with the actual photos of the Seattle City Council. But what you see is that people under 35 in great numbers vote for women because they realize that she doesn't have the power, they don't have the power, together they could have the power. And so in this, what we've been tracking is the amazing climb to getting young people registered. Only about a third of the people under 35 are registered, but then usually 17 to 20% is the nation's average of how they vote, how many of them actually vote. Of that 17% of those who do vote, the fact is almost all of them come from families that are perfect voters. It's in their genes, so to speak. But in this case, the most important reason for women actually being able to win is that more young people are voting all the time in local races as well. And what's happening is we are almost up to 50% women who are voting for women. And this has happened dramatically in I would say in the last 4 years, we've jumped 8%, basically thanks to our sisters and friends in the Me Too movement. By showing the vulnerability that we could actually change laws, we could change any kind of look at what's happening here. The fact is more women, that 8% has been golden in us starting in 2018 to actually elect more women than we have ever to the United States Congress and to actually elect more women of color. As it turns out, the United States now has almost the largest number of color women in our national parliament, our Congress, than any other country. There's only one other that's greater. That's of course Rwanda, but we don't rewrite anything about them. Why they're winning? This is why more women are running. You know, we have 576 women that are running for the United States Congress as we speak. In all of that, we have 102 women in Congress. We have 28 women, I'm sorry, we have 26 women that are in the United States Senate. When more women run, more women win. Now, you would think this would be like, well, that seems evident. Well, it's not been, the problem has not been that we haven't had a lot of women winning. We just haven't had the volume running. And I have to say, more Republican women are running. Even if they're running against Trump, they are Republican women. I would say 3 that are running for national, congressional, or senatorial office are actually pro-choice, 3 of other Republican women. And once upon a time, I remind you that half of the women running as Republicans in the United States Senate were pro-Trump, pro-choice. The record number of women of color running is amazing. If you go through the list, actually I was going to offer to you for any kind of reasoning you want. I have a sort of a video clips of about 30 different women that are running for office this year, Republicans and Democrats, just to show you the variety and the richness of the women that we have, and you're welcome to use it or post it. For Rebel can have anything I want. I will love it.
Yeah, we would love to post it. We can follow up with an email to the attendees with the links. That would be great.
It is just so much fun. And I'll point out a couple that I think you really got to see besides Cori Bush, who's actually somebody that I helped train to run for office, the African-American woman in Missouri, who actually won with the photo of her taking a knee and foisting her arm up in the air. A woman who was beaten on tape in a protest in, I would say, in St. Louis. And so in all of it, she's one of my very favorite. No doubt about it, the record number of women of color running comes from the fact that we've seen now many young women registering, and young people registering and voting. Women voting for women. This is a new trend line, but I have to say women have stopped saying, well, I'm not going to vote for her just because she's a woman. And people continue to say, well, you know, I really like her, but you know, what she got that I ain't got. All of these things have happened. So we're not putting women to higher standards, which we have been doing, we can show, for the last 25, 30 years. In this, women are becoming the choice of party leaders. They used to be like, you know, the plague. You see women coming and the party leader would say, uh-oh, I got to get out of here. Well, now there's actually been such a turnaround. You know, what's been good about this COVID is women who stayed home. I mean, there's only so many times you can reorder the actual spices in the spice rack to be alphabetized, or there's only so much time you can spend cleaning the oven. The truth is, women used to do anything else besides dial for dollars. Now, not so. Now, they not only have begun doing their entire list, but women have raised more than their goals this year. They have never done this before. This year, most of those women who stayed home made it a habit to get on the phone and raise their dollars. And catch this, when women ran and lost, what would happen? You would never hear from them again. They would drop out of politics. They wouldn't contribute. In many cases, we found scores of women who ran, even in very close races, and never voted again. Burned, absolutely emotionally fraught with anger, with fear. The fact is, they just didn't run. Well, let me show you this. The 2018, all the women who lost then, do you know that 3/4 of them are running again now? 3/4. This is unheard of. And actually, it's because when women lost, they felt the pain and shame of it so personally, they dropped out. And even if you were a good friend trying to bring them back in, you got discouraged about it too. Well, now we have the rebound gang these rebound women, there's over 40 nationwide who ran for Congress, who lost tight races. They are running again. And that has been one of the secrets, not a secret, about guys. If a guy didn't win, he would just assume he was supposed to be the absolute, inevitable winner of the next election, whatever office it was. So women are contributing. I want to say thank you all. I suspect every one of you has given to a woman this election cycle. What's important here is that women are contributing in larger amounts. And what was the one trick that does it? Well, we put it on the old credit card, and every first of the month, out comes $30 or $40 in terms of all of this. And what's happening now is that we're seeing that that is the way that women that were traditionally $25 to $100 donors have now become 250 plus donors. And oh, by the way, not only have they made themselves at least noticeable in the list of America high donors, the fact is they are also responsible for bringing others in to do the same. The other thing that's happened is the public's very sympathetic to women. If they've been attacked and what's happened, we have 3 incredible situations right in Washington state where women who were attacked viciously in, I would say, negative hit ads. This woman, Twina Nobles in Tacoma, running against Steve Oban. She's African-American. She's the head of the Urban League. She's terrific. And what happened with this woman is that he runs a picture of her looking like a slave. The woman's gorgeous. Like they've got her in black and white looking like a slave in pauper's clothes. And he's in his shirt and tie in color. Well, not only the National Women's Political Caucus, but 6 different women's organizations bound it together, went to the press and outed this. She got the top number of votes in the primary. I'm betting she wins the general. A long time, staunch Republican from Tacoma. I think this woman is going to actually beat Steve Oban, and I think she's going to end up in our state Senate. So the more that people see accomplishments of women, they support them. When you know a woman's done a good job, literally it makes it not just easier to vote for other women, but what it does, it makes you stop and consider what are the actual opportunities these women have had that made you think they've accomplished so much. The COVID, you just have to know that what's happened with COVID, the most important thing here is more money is being raised by individual candidates and not PACs. Now, I haven't seen, and we won't see for another 2 weeks, the total number of PAC dollars, but the number of individual donors has doubled in just 4 years. This is throughout America. And there's 2 different reasons. One, women and our absolute kind of like stinginess sometimes about putting more money on the table. Well, it's not just that. It's that these youngins have come in. I teach at the University of Washington in political science. And when I actually asked the class how many of them had contributed to campaigns, half of them raised their hands. And by the end of the class, every single one had contributed. The fact is, young people may only be giving $4, but they are giving it every time there's a headline that features their candidates. More than anything else, women who have been running on the message of fresh, where the change we need, all of these things have become kind of part of the action. However, not this year. This year, the message is stability and safety, mostly stability from these chaotic times and waking up to more horrible news than we heard yesterday, and safety in terms of being safe in my community, in my home. It's not law and order. It's really about all personal safety. It's that systemic racism we face. All of this is out there. And when they call this the year of race reckoning, it is more than that. It is that people are expecting a little bit more be done by now than's happening. So yes, I do expect that stability and a different definition of public safety are on the table. How we vote is crazy, my friends, and I have to tell you, this is the worst thing yet. Every state has a different process, you know that. We have a darn good electoral process here. I think that our Secretary of State has done a great job. In all of it, what's happening is that with 50 states and all of the other American, I would say, jurisdictions, the fact is, I don't believe we're going to know who the President of the United States is until Thanksgiving at the earliest. I think a winner will not be named until then, and already 200 lawsuits have already been filed against the procedures being used. Already there are 200 suits out there claiming that the absentee ballot process wasn't open, it wasn't even, they couldn't find the forms in time, that the ballots never got back. All of these things are going to be part of the problem. What's happened that is good news is that we have, of the United States Senate, you got 100 members right now. I'm saying that it looks to me that we're likely to come in at 28 or 29 by the end of this year. Know that if we pick up 2 a year, it's huge, huge. Our average is less than 1% for every election since 1990. But the kind of women that are running are what really make the difference, because in that we will finally see a diversity of women of color in our Senate. In Congress, we got 101 women. One has actually resigned prior to the election season. But out of 465 members, I mean, I have to say, in 2018, 476 ran, 234 won primaries. Right now, what we have, 298 in 2020. I have to say, the fact that the practically 300 women won primaries, this is unbelievable. Right now, we have 47 districts where women are running against women. And do you know that in all of it, I'm sorry, 47 districts right now have seats where women are running against women. There's other seats where we also have women of color running against women of color. Both of these are first for this country. And when you take a look at it, let me just give you some of the rundown in terms of what we see. This Cori Bush, the woman who took the knee, the fact is that she beat a longtime incumbent. Our own Pramila Jayapal, what a star this woman continues to be. I have to say that I'm very impressed with what they're doing. Know that in some of the less than positive news that we have that's happening right now is that we have seen a great increase in the number of women in politics and violence, not just the violence of a nasty headline or an attack ad, but what we see now are actual trolls. We see stalkings. We see opportunities for people who are in large crowds to segue towards the front to be able to get into a face-to-face actual confrontation with women. One of the largest stories that will be coming out of this is, yes, we need to step up and actually help our federal delegations in terms of pulling together violence against women in politics as a crime. That actually means, among other things, that if you are caught actually in a bullying capacity against any woman and you are an elected official, that you lose your job. The fact is that it's become a big concern that we will be starting to deal with at the start of this next, our state legislative session. And you must know Rashid Tlaib from Detroit. She is the woman that is actually going to be sponsoring the federal legislation to be able to start putting any kind of misbehavior that many of these men in Congress are involved with, to be putting it in a state where they have to account for it and they need to pay the price. In all of it, the women running against women, my goodness, what a most marvelous opportunity. And they're not in like the big showy, states. They're not here, not even in Washington State. What they are, it's Iowa. Are you kidding me? Iowa. As of today, Joni Ernst, who's the incumbent, is running, Teresa Greenfield is the Democrat, and they are now less than 1 percentage point apart. In Maine, Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the House, Susan Collins, longtime moderate Republican. Right now, Sarah Gideon is 8 percentage points ahead. In Wyoming, if you can believe, Martha Ben Davis is out there along with Paula Loomis, and I should say that it's in Wyoming. Her real name that she is running under is Mava Mabet. I'm sorry, Mabet. And anyways, but she, the woman on the right, is actually the person that we believe is going to win that. Wyoming, Iowa, Maine, West Virginia. Are you kidding me? These are places we would never have imagined that we would be having women running against women. And oh, by the way, the least negative campaigns in the country. When Susan Collins and Sarah get together and start slinging the mud, it's usually about the Affordable Care Act and has nothing to do with people's personal lives. And they always say when it's over with, the two of them, Sarah and Susan, will go up and shake hands and with a elbow actually give them the mask. They both wear masks. All of that is part of how women run. That's not nearly as vicious as what we see from some of the guys in the packs. And finally, these are the races I watched the most, because obviously Martha McGrath, who was appointed and then won her position in Arizona, is facing Mark Kelly, a favorite here in Washington State. He's been up here doing 2 and 3 different fundraisers, mostly because Gabby Gibbon, his wife's congressional career was actually run by Liz Berry, who was running herself for the state legislature here in the 36th district. But Mark and Gabby have been here doing reciprocal fundraisers. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't put my last stake in Amy McGrath, the woman who had the best ads of all in 2018, showing her as a fighter pilot and taking on the big Kentucky machine. Now, it's unlikely, I think, that she will win, but they're already talking 47 million each in terms of what they're spending. It is huge. And so again, it's not the big city people who are getting all of the actual attention this year. It is really the rest of America that has shown that it can compete as well. So with all of that, what I would say is that it's a great year. And what you ought to know is that when you look at all the pathetic, horrid things that happen, COVID and all of the things in terms of the police brutality, all of these things are our great police chief getting actually fired by these little tempestuous city council members. The fact is, in terms of how she was beaten out of the city is appalling. However, if you see what's awaiting us, Washington State is now on the brink of 46% of its state legislature being women. We will be number 2 in the country. And I have to say, it is just an amazing fact that our legislature, our key House and Senate committees are being run by women who not only know what they're doing, but they're doing a great job. We now will have, with the election this November the 3rd, we're going to have more women of color than any place in the country. And we have a 19% people of color population. We will outrank their percentage in the population. It's just amazing. The fact is that if you're looking to do something to be part of this cause, contribute to a woman running that you know it would be a great voice for you. The second is, if you see someone under the age of 35, woman or man, a niece, a nephew, doesn't care where they vote, as long as they vote. Find these young people who particularly haven't been actually asked to join the actually civic-minded. This generation is more qualified to vote than any other ever. This is a generation of remarkable young people who are relatively well educated, certainly better than their grandparents, and more importantly, they actually see the relevancy of being involved, if only they're not actually criticized or beaten back and told that nah, go come back when you actually own a house and have a kid. Fact is that it is time that we do reach out to young voters and make it mandatory that they run. In terms of all this, they vote, they run, they work. If you're looking to get more young people to vote for a candidate you love, make sure you hire those young people to work on the campaigns. These are all part of what we've learned in terms of how we are going to get to that magical 50% number. And all of it, I would just add that if you haven't had a chance to see The Glorias, you got to. It is by far one of the greatest movies I've seen put together regarding Gloria Steinem. The fact is that she has put this piece together representing 4 different phases of her life, and they all kind of interrelate. It's fascinating from a filmmaking perspective. It's just enjoyable, and have your handkerchiefs ready. In all of that, I would be very happy to take any questions you've got.
Wow, Cathy, that was terrific. I can't tell you how enthused I am about what you have told us and shared with us today. I'm all charged up, I have to say. And, you know, I was going to ask you a question about those top 3 things that we can do right now, and you already answered those. But I do have a question. Some people are so disgusted with politics in America right now and are choosing not to vote. What would you say to that person?
Well, I have to say that it does matter. It matters much more when you don't vote. Because if you don't, you join a growing list of folks who are feeling very alienated. And as a result, what happens is that the people in charge just become more in charge. I mean, incumbency wins unless there are a lot of people, particularly young people and women, that are standing up and demanding that they have the right to be at the table too. It's the importance of seeing how many are not voting that has actually propelled me to stay so active, because it is true, the minute you let down any guard, you'll fall back. I mean, we're a state that's about ready to reach, well, actually, we were the first state to reach 40% women in the state legislature. And then we sort of, I don't know, went on to other things. And what happened is that we fell back to 31%. And then we were actually at 30% for like 2 days. And then the fact is, we all said, holy moly, we got to get going again. You can never let go. You've got to keep the persistence on. And if you are anyone who is like discouraged, depressed, it can't be any worse than election morn and the day after, when we found out Hillary didn't win, despite all the fact that 98% of all the people I knew not only voted for her, but more importantly, knew she was going to win and let down their guard. So, yes, stay persistent.
Yeah. Thank you, Cathy. So question from Catherine. Do you see civility ever coming back into politics? And I love how she put this. Or is the toothpaste out of the tube on that?
I would say, yeah, it could be. But, you know, I was so frustrated watching Biden and the president. And I was disgusted at him because I'm like, come on, Biden, get in there. Don't let him talk over you. Come on, don't do that. But it was once again a last bastion of civility where even he got pulled down to calling Trump clown and you idiot and all those things. The fact is that I do see civility returning, but it's only going to come if it comes in the package of a woman that is literally just not going to let it happen. There are guys who have said that they want to return to civility. They run organizations of such, but it hasn't happened. With women at the table, you should see when they get vicious. Oh, the Sarah Gideon and the Susan Collins, where they get nasty. It's imperceptible as being nasty because it's really very civil.
Well, this leads really nicely into this next question. It's like, do you think that women have unique challenges to men when they're running in these races, you know, like Amy Coney Barrett and Kamala Harris? How do you think that they're being treated?
Well, I think that in both cases, it's been, I would say, scrutiny that men don't get. It's also kinds of, I always love it when they go to the close. My favorite part is that how long does it take
Right.
for a reporter to talk about the fact that, you know, Kamala is in pants and, you know, Barrett has dresses that are 2 decades long. And it's like,
Right.
it's sort of like, why is she wearing that, you know, in the middle of her leg? Give me a break. And so when the press starts picking that up, you just sort of look at it and say how far we have not yet come.
You know, that brings me to something when Hillary was running and she was being interviewed, and they started talking about, it's like, do you drink coffee? And you know, Hillary's going on, well, I quit coffee. I'm like, oh my God, they would never ask a man that.
Not
And
at all.
I mean, that has just stood out for me for the last, you know, 4 or 5 years, that, and you see that over and over again about the questions or the judgment for women.
And particularly about young, if they have kids, that is a question that still comes up in so many cases. Kamala, I worked a lot with Kamala, and I got to tell you that I just never had any idea that she had all those kids. And it was just because, but the minute that she became vice president, then all of a sudden the family was an issue. And so I thought, we will never escape some of these trend lines. And it's
Right.
women journalists that are actually asking the questions.
Which is so frustrating to me. But with that, Cathy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. I have seen you speak before, and I'm always so blown away by the information that you share. And today was another day of incredible information about women, you know, not just locally and nationally, but internationally. I mean, the stories that you're telling are so inspiring.
Well, thank you.
So
And thank you for joining it as part of it. You can retell these stories too. And I will send along the actual PowerPoint to both of you so that you can actually share it with people if they want. But I just want to say that I'm also so happy to have found you in all of this. I have to say, it's just a peaceful enjoyment to know you're there, and I can be watching in the future too.
Oh, thank you so much, Cathy. I do have one quick question before we move on. The efforts that we've seen, like these postcards, sending them out to states like Florida, encouraging people to vote. Do you
Yep.
know any results of if that is an effective tool?
I do. They are. My own campaigns in this state. What am I doing this weekend? I am handwriting postcards that I never thought I would do before.
Great.
And we are not just to places other than here, but frankly, to in our own campaigns to people here in our own communities. The effect of having something come from a real person. There you go. That's
I have
excellent.
one for Lori in Spokane, and then I'm writing to people in Texas. So that's
well,
what I'm doing this weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Joni, do you want to talk about upcoming events?
Yeah, thank you again, Cathy. And I'm so glad to hear that you think postcards are good.
Same here.
Oh, yeah.